Hi, Blastpop here. Today I'm doing a little something different. This is Fields of Fire by GMT Games, and what's interesting about this is this has gone through a second iteration of the game, where they've gone through a second edition, version 2, which cleans up a lot of the initial rules problems that existed, or the perceived rules problems. The game was perfectly playable out of the box in its first version. It was challenging because it definitely broke the rules in terms of game and rules presentation in a way that many wargamers are not familiar with. It broke those conventions. In an effort to make it more understandable, people came up with excellent videos to show how the game actually plays, because it's sometimes not evident to a veteran gamer by reading the rules how you actually are supposed to implement the gameplay. So version 2 came out, and they've issued an update kit. I believe it was towards the beginning of 2018. Or you could buy the new second edition. I have here the update kit. The update kit doesn't include a box, so I have my old box here, and it maintains and uses the existing cards that I had. And there are very few, if any, changes with respect to the 4 decks of cards in the game. So, in your box, this gives you a sense of what's in the game, what's in the campaigns. There's 3 major campaigns. World War II Normandy, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. Now, within those, you have several scenarios that are delineated to compose the campaign. And the way the game is played, it's very heavy in the random aspect, so you could play the Normandy campaign a dozen times and end up with some very different scenarios and results because of that. It's a solitaire game, although it's certainly possible to play with a friend to share decisions in a cooperative way. You have the rule book, and it's kind of a tome. I mean, there's a lot to it. On the back you have your sequence of play, and it weighs in at 64 pages. It's color illustrated in a matte finish. I won't go into the system because that would, in terms of how to learn, because it would take several episodes to learn how to play the game. But the cards are used as your board, and the boards are randomly generated every time you play. And you can see here on the left page the what it looks a little bit like in gameplay. And here you have your orders and different things you can do. And you have an illustration on the right showing what different actions can be done, and for phone and radio examples. I highly recommend reading the rules, watching a video, and then trying to push the pieces along. That's what I did. And with the old version, I haven't played the new version since it was released. You got vehicles, you got helicopters, you got your combat, vehicle action. I mean, there's just a ton of things to do. It's recommended you start off with the Normandy campaign, because it typically involves fewer forces, thereby reducing the learning curve at least a little bit. Rallying. It has all the things you would expect in a infantry World War II game, or Korea or Vietnam. Also included in the update kit is charts and tables. Tells you what you can do. This is a fold-out sheet, and you have your action menus of the different things you can do for command and control, for movement, rally, combat actions, command, potential, contacts, spotting, and infantry combat and modifiers. Nicely illustrated and documented. You have force packages here, in this case for the North Vietnamese Army and the VC. And appears that I got 2 pages that are stuck here. Okay. And then on the back, the German force packages for the Normandy campaign and North Korean for the Korean campaign. Anti-tank and vehicle weapons chart. And then action attempt symbols, which corresponds to the action deck, which I'll show you in a moment. A way to keep track of your commands, keep track of your commands, your assets, things that are indigenous to some of the units on the board. One-sided. Helicopter control for Vietnam. Enemy activities hierarchy, so when you run into the enemy, what do they do? And there's additional activities. And you got 2 briefing books, which are for the campaigns in detail what's in each campaign. And you have a set of charts for each battle and information about the campaign as well. And each battle within the campaign has its own set of unique charts of what you might run into. So for the first scenario, it's called the, pardon my French, Charvier offensive. Not sure that's how it's pronounced. And what the enemy might do based on their status and situation. So within the campaign, you have several offensive statuses, whether a side is defensive or offensive. And so how that is impacted and how it impacts the gameplay is right here. And you have, in this particular book, you have all your battles for the Normandy campaign. And it's more of just the same. It's just very chart intensive, but you only need a few of these for any given situation. And then here you have the information for the Vietnamese campaign. And it just continues on through within this briefing booklet to the end. Briefing booklet 2 is 2 Korean campaigns, which is the Natong River campaign and the Heartbreak Ridge campaign. So you got 2 campaigns there, which the second one, the Heartbreak Ridge campaign, is a more recent edition. It wasn't in the first edition originally. Again, a similar set of information to be utilized for the campaigns. Okay, the Fields of Fire counter sheets, you got 5 of those. They're the thick counters, brown core, and combination of system markers and forces kind of pop right out, nicely die cut. When I had first seen the graphics for the first edition for these counters, I was not initially fond of them, but in utilizing them, they're very functional, and I actually grew to appreciate the design of the counters. German and American forces here. Please pause the video if you want to look a little bit longer. Additionally, while not part of the update kit, information you'll need to track for your experience and casualties. And it's important in the campaign. It's a pad, small pad. Probably will have to make extra copies along the way for extended play. Now, in the game, you'll create a board bigger than this that represents what you would expect to encounter for the terrain that you're playing your campaign on. And then you can add more. I'll add more here just to show you what it's like. And then typically you'll take a few of these backsides of the cards to indicate your starting zone. You start off your forces here typically, and you advance and you run to enemy forces. And this is the impact of the terrain as far as open fields. Not much cover there. You'll see a gully, a draw, a farm, woods. So the terrain varies. And you construct each board randomly each time you play the game, unless indicated otherwise. During the course of the game, you will use this action deck. And on this action deck, you got several things. If you're resolving fire, it tells you what happens based on the firepower and the draw of a card. So this substitutes for a die roll. If you're trying to rally, and you get this, you rally. The number of command points you get, both overall and at a lower level. I'm trying to remember quite how that worked, but you ended up with 2 sets of commands. A random generation, a number generator, hit effect, so you can see if a unit is hit, what happens to it. So it varies. So this basically resolves everything in the game that you need. There are no dice, whether you're successful at reaching headquarters with a walkie-talkie, anti-tank values. And much in the same way that Upfront did for the Avalon Hill Squad Leader card game that came out back in 1982. So it's a multifunction card, and it works rather nicely. Additionally, you have the Normandy, the Korean, and the Vietnam cards to use in much the same way as the Normandy cards are used here. And additionally, with the cards, you do have a few reference cards to use as handy dandy cheat sheets. So if you have the existing package, see if you can get the upgrade, because it gives you pretty much everything you need without having to buy the entire game again. Additionally, as of this video, GMT is in the process of printing and releasing the next game in the series, which includes another U.S. Infantry Division, and I think it's the 4th Infantry Division, if I'm not mistaken, this being the 9th Infantry in this particular set. That, I believe, will be out in the next month or two from GMT Games in 2019. And so they'll have a similar, presumably, system, although I haven't seen or followed it too much up to this point. A lot of good gameplay, great solitaire gameplay here. Keep you busy for a long time. And it is quite challenging and breaks the mold of your traditional solitaire games. It's really unique. Please comment, like, and subscribe. This has been Blastpop. Bye.